What's inside Vladimir Putin's $1.5 billion mansion? Well, it is official that Putin earns $140,000 a year. So where does the $1 billion Putin palace come from? On a thickly wooded mountainside overlooking Russia's Black Sea coast, an extraordinary building has gradually taken shape. It is alleged to be a palace built for the personal use of Vladimir Putin with massive and illegal use of state funds. Originally conceived, it is said, as a modest holiday house with a swimming pool, it now boasts a magnificent columned facade reminiscent of the country palaces Russian Tsars built in the 18th century. By the way, do you know how much billionaires spend on their security? Let me know in the comments below. The massive wrought iron gates into the courtyard are topped with a golden imperial eagle. Outside are formal gardens, a private theater, a landing pad with bays for 3 helicopters, and accommodation for security guards. All this and more is revealed by satellite images of the area and photographs on the internet, some of which you see here, which campaigners say were leaked by workers at the site. The mystery of why the palace was built and who provided the enormous sums of money required to pay for it is much harder to uncover. But now, with Vladimir Putin about to be sworn in for a 3rd term as Russia's president, one of his former business associates has spoken to BBC Newsnight, giving more detail than ever before about how he says the mansion was built to the leader's specifications for his personal use. Sergei Kolesnikov, who now works in the Estonian capital of Tallinn, having fled Russia, was for several years one of those responsible for building the palace. He is the first insider from Mr. Putin's business circle to blow the whistle on what he says is high-level corruption threatening to destroy the country's economy. Kolesnikov says he was involved with 2 of Mr. Putin's friends, Nikolai Shamalov and Dmitry Gorolov, in a venture proposed by Mr. Putin himself to provide Russian hospitals with new equipment. Several Russian oligarchs, including Chelsea Football Club owner Roman Abramovich, donated millions of dollars to help upgrade Russia's hospitals. Kolesnikov imported the medical equipment, and he says his company was able to get big discounts on the supplies. Some of the donors deny that was possible, but Kolesnikov says millions of dollars were saved in this way, and at Mr. Putin's suggestion, much of that money was put into offshore companies, without the donors' knowledge, for use in other investment projects. These included ailing industries such as shipbuilding, projects Kolesnikov says he discussed directly with Putin, but an ever greater proportion of the extra funds, he says, went into Project South, the Black Sea Palace near the village of Prozkovivka. Kolesnikov told Newsnight that he was at a meeting with Putin at his country house outside of Moscow when the issue of the Black Sea Palace was raised directly. He says the Russian leader ordered his powerful deputy prime minister, Igor Sechin, to deal with it. Shortly afterwards, Kolesnikov says Sechin summoned him to discuss details. He also says he had many other meetings at the palace itself where Mr. Putin's instructions for fittings and furnishings were discussed with a senior officer in the Federal Security Service, which guards the president and prime minister. More usually, he says, Putin passed on his instructions for the building through his friend and Mr. Kolesnikov's partner, Nikolai Shamalov. But the whistleblower says he eventually became disgusted by the sums being spent on the palace and fell out with his partner Shamalov. In December 2010, Kolesnikov wrote an open letter to President Dmitry Medvedev detailing the involvement of himself and others in the project and outlining his allegations against Putin, then Prime Minister. Newsnight attempted to contact Shamalov and Kolesnikov's other former partner, Dmitry Gorolov, but their company said they were unavailable for comment on this story. Putin's spokesman has denied Mr. Kolesnikov's allegations, along with other claims about the Russian leader's personal assets. Officially, the palace belonged, until recently, to a company partly owned by Shamalov. Now it is owned by another businessman who is not directly connected to Putin. But documents obtained by one of Russia's few opposition newspapers, Novaya Gazeta, and seen by Newsnight, suggest that the Kremlin lied when it said it had no involvement in the building of the palace. An agreement to build the mansion on state-owned land was signed by the head of the Department for Presidential Affairs, Vladimir Putin, who subsequently denied knowing anything about the site. The documents do not prove that the palace was meant for Putin himself or that he was personally involved in its construction, but mystery still surrounds it. When anti-corruption campaigners managed to get through to the front of the palace last year, they were met not only by private security guards, but also by uniformed members of the official Kremlin Guard Service. Later, the private security company claimed its employees had simply bought the uniforms and Kremlin identity cards in a shop. But for the campaigners and for Kolesnikov, The Kremlin Guard's presence and the elaborate infrastructure indicate the true purpose of the building and what they say is the massive illegal use of state funds. It is the building of a road direct to the palace on government money, Kolesnikov says, a high-power electric line direct to the palace. The government spent tens of millions of dollars on these. If it was just for Putin's friend Shamalov, why would the Federal Guard Service Commission monitor the building of the palace? Why would he need 3 helipads? A private person doesn't need these, but for a president, they're essential. Putin's alleged secret residence sits near the coastal town of Golodnizhik on the Black Sea in southern Russia, underneath a no-fly zone. What do the builders say? Stanislav, not his real name, said he had to come to work on the construction site at the Black Sea resort of Golodnizhik in autumn 2018. The palace had many remnants of the luxurious decor shown in Navalny's film, but the furniture was mostly gone. The scale of opulence was incredible. Later, much of the palace was stripped bare, he told BBC Russian. The mold problem was brought up in the video, and Navalny claimed that the palace was undergoing reconstruction because of it. 2 builders say they saw the mold themselves. Walls and ceilings were covered in mold, just ordinary mold, green, and places even black. It had affected the whole building. We were shocked, Stanislav told the BBC. The palace was built using plasterboard attached to main walls, and the mold appeared between the concrete walls and plasterboard. Another builder, Igor, said he had gone to work on the palace in 2017 and that by then, the mold had not spread beyond the lower ground floor. A source close to the Kremlin confirmed to BBC Russian that mold was a real problem. The palace had been completed and was used for several years, but then fungus appeared, accompanied by an unpleasant smell. Igor, again not his real name, complained that they were told off for every nick and scratch. All those cabinets were made out of expensive wood. So many people worked here, so expensive, so many materials. And then they tell us, cut the wires, take all this apart, break that down, he said. How luxurious is it? On visiting the property in autumn 2011, one builder the BBC spoke to said his first impression was that it was as if the Egyptian pyramids were being built. I reckon around 1,500 people worked at the construction site at that point. There were Russians, Uzbeks, there were soldiers. There was a rush to get it finished. Another worker said all signs of construction were camouflaged so they could not be spotted from the sea. All concrete and metal structures had hills, trees, grass, and rocks painted over them to cover them up, to make them blend in with the landscape. There was a Japanese garden, and Igor was impressed with the floor-level pool. You couldn't even tell it was there. Many of the workers who told the BBC they had worked at the site in the past 15 years speak of frequent reconstruction taking place. They kept building and demolishing, building and then demolishing, one builder said. There was also a large gym built out of marble, but that only lasted 2 or 3 years, he added. I was so surprised when a digger turned up one day and started smashing it up. So is there anything left that you think we should have added in this video? Let us know in the comments. And that's it for this video. Don't forget to leave this video a like and subscribe to this channel for more info. And as soon as you get that done for me, I will take care of your knowledge and learning experience so we both win.